Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
And today we're going to be talking about making time for writing. But before we do, I just want to kind of say to everybody who got, or anybody who got fooled by our last episode, that we are probably going to try to do something stupid once a year, aside from the usual episodes. And so, hopefully it wasn't too much of a surprise that came out on regular schedule. We recorded it on March 31st, and I just didn't have time to put it up the next day. And so I figured it'd be a little bit more surprising if we put it up in the usual time slot. And the idea was yours, Justin, right?
Oh yeah, blame me.
And we both have some blame. But
I'm particularly happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a book review, but it is actually an improv session.
Yeah, that's the part I'm happy with, because like the MacGyver one, we took some notes beforehand, and we winged a lot of it, but we had like a general idea.
Yeah, we had a framework. Both of us did.
But that last one, that was all on the spot.
Yeah,
and we didn't just do one story, we did two.
Right.
So it was fun.
Indeed.
And I'm surprised that it was great the number of times that I was just able to set things up in the hope that I'd remember to do something with them. Like I remember at for the second book, a dollar short.
Yes.
There at the beginning I had said something about how the things that happened at the beginning had something to do with the story. It does play a role, because you were like, none of this has anything to do with it though, right? They're going to a fantasy land.
Yeah.
I was like, well, no, it does have something to do. And then as we got to the end, I remembered that I had said that. And so I kind of said that whole thing with how the one guy was actually protecting the world from the other world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm glad that today wasn't the day we were doing that, because I'm clearly doing well with words right now.
Basically.
But yeah, that was that was fun, and
we do beg your indulgence to our audience, because we do like to be foolish at times. So hopefully it wasn't too much of a surprise that these weren't real books that we were describing.
What he means to say is suck it up.
Buttercup. All right. Let's get to our real topic for today, which is making time for writing, which I already said, but I'm using up time that could otherwise be spent writing. So there we go.
This is the one where we get everyone to stop listening. Here's what you do. If you normally listen to this, just don't ever do it again, and instead write with that time. That
would get you about an hour a week.
Yeah,
which is not nothing, right? You can write probably 500 words in an hour. Maybe a little more if you really know what you're doing.
An hour a day is very good if you aren't trying to write 30 books in a year. If you write for an hour a day, you can probably write 2 books a year.
Yeah.
This does not include editing time. You're going to have to, once again, suck it up for
either
the editing.
Either do that or outsource it, yeah.
Yeah. But I know you just finished writing and editing a book.
Yes.
Which we will discuss next time.
Probably next week, yeah. Assuming you have enough time to read it, which you probably won't.
Oh, I will. I have a whole weekend to read it. I'll be good. This isn't like what is my phone doesn't have a ringer. Did my phone just ring?
I didn't hear your phone ring. Are you hallucinating your phone ringing?
I'm hallucinating my phone ringing.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, is that burnt toast?
It might be. Either that or you're having a stroke.
Well, the weird thing is I'm not smelling it, I'm seeing it.
Oh, well, that's a totally different kind of stroke.
So you've just finished writing a book and you've just finished editing a book.
Yes.
Have you already started something else, or are you in the preparing phase? Which may include eating ice cream and taking a vacation on the beach.
I mean, right now I'm thinking about... My next thing is probably not going to be fiction. I'm also thinking that I need to go back and actually get some work that actually pays. You know, unless my book suddenly starts selling 1 million copies, I'm going to need to go get some work somewhere, so I'm trying to set that up as well.
It should not be too difficult. I mean, I know that there's... On the one hand, there's not tons of spots in the field you're in, but on the other hand, there's not tons of people that can apply for them either, so... It's a bit of give and take, I guess.
Well, that would be working under the assumption that I'm going back to working for the government, which I'm probably not going to do.
That's also true. So, even so, I mean, there are definitely private sector jobs for physicists. It's probably a little bit more difficult to find, but they exist.
So that was, I mean, so I'm a special case in the sense that I had a very good paying job, and I stopped. I basically said, cool, I'm going to go write for a couple of years, and I had enough savings to just carry me through writing for 2.5 years, which, you know, is not something that most people can do. So seeing as how that's an unrealistic expectation for most people, the question would be, assuming that you have limited time, how do you do it? How do you do it? Because you actually have a regular job and write at the same time, so to speak.
Well, I mean, it depends on the year. Last year was not so good for writing. The year before was pretty good. What
made them different?
And I'd have trouble remembering at this point. I know 2 years ago I was having a lot of fun writing short stories. I was on a short story kick, and I wanted to just try a few different things out, which, quite frankly, it may sound like a waste of time and useless, but because I did that, I now have several complete ideas ready for when I finish the book that I've been wasting my time not writing lately.
Okay.
But I slowed down my pace. Originally, I wasn't writing anything for a month, and then I'd write a little, and then I wouldn't write for a month again. And I'm also a special case. I have the luxury of doing that because it's not my primary source of income.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people don't have it as their primary source of income.
That is the impression that I'm getting after some market research. That seems to be, I mean, there's a lot more people who don't manage to make a living off of writing than those who do.
Yeah, but there's also people that make just enough extra pocket money where they can work part-time and do it, and those people are in a pretty good position to write regularly because, you know, the extra hours to do so are justified in sitting at a desk and spending all your time writing.
Sure.
I probably have one too many hobbies that I do that eats up too much of that time I could be writing. But that's something that I can freely drop whenever I choose to. So what I'll say is that I've experimented with writing for hours at a time, and that seemed to work the best for me. I have experimented with going on and off. That didn't get much done.
Yeah.
And of course it's going
honestly, that's my experience too, is that if you're going to get something done, you probably need to set aside some decently sized consecutive, say, daily blocks of time, or else you're going to find yourself spending more time kind of like, what was I doing? You know, kind of getting yourself back up to speed every time. Whereas if you do keep it to like a small amount of time, but every day, you can usually keep a pretty good like notice or track on where you're at, as opposed to like doing it once a week.
Well, that's kind of the point I was going to make. You summed it up a bit. I was actually going to say that a week is about the most that I feel like not writing in a row, because that's about when I start to forget where I might be going with something. So like I just wrote something a couple of days ago, and it's like, okay, I know what I want to do next. And if I didn't write anything in the next couple of days, I would probably be like, I would probably still know what I was going to do next, but I'd need to maybe go back and check a character name or check exactly what I did in something.
Yeah.
And the backtracking starts to eat up time too.
Well, I mean,
so really,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, really, what I found probably works second best for me, and I'll explain why it's only second best. But
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I've been doing things like I get home from work, I do a bit of exercise, and then I maybe do something fun, and then I sit down and write. And I do those for all for extremely short times, like, half an hour, 45 minutes. I don't even really do an hour of anything.
Yeah.
And then, since I'm not too concerned with making money with it at the moment, because I will skip days quite often, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I did 2 weeks straight of an hour a day, roughly.
Yeah.
And it keeps ideas fresh in your head, and you make significant progress even with little chunks. Like I've said this before, and I'll go ahead and put it out there again. When you really crunch the numbers, it works out to not being a particularly difficult thing to do to write 2 books a year. Terry Pratchett was the one that I usually quote, who said that he writes 400 words a day, and that gives him 2 books a year.
Yeah.
So it's not unreasonable to spend a little bit of time each day writing and
a minor
getting a lot
side
done.
point about that is that it doesn't necessarily need to be like the best writing, because you can always go back and change it. But like, for instance, when I was kind of finishing up the last third of my first draft of my novel, I really didn't feel like writing it that much. But what I did was I would sit down and I would grab my outline and I would say, okay, this is what I'm working on today. And I would sit down and I would crunch out 1 or 2 pages of kind of mediocre prose. And then, during the editing process, I would say, okay, I've got the skeleton here and I definitely need to add some stuff to it. But all of the basic building blocks are here. And there's, something that I'm going to take and make it 5,000 words. It's already 3. So, there's a little bit of loss that happens there, but a lot of that skeleton's still in there. It's just that the bones are now padded with lots of little bits of
meaty
description
goodness,
or character interactions or character details or setting details or world building, where before there was not much.
Yeah, that was that's getting to the second point I was going to make about that.
Yeah.
Is if you write the way I write, where you don't really plot anything out like that, I did find that definitely got a lot better quality writing if I spent at least 3 to 4 hours on it instead of just 1 hour.
You get into a rhythm,
because, well, not only do you get into a rhythm, but you get to about maybe half an hour in is where you really start to get into the flow of things. It's like, oh, the ideas for what needs to come next kind of... I mean, not always, but most of the time, it's like, yep, this goes next, and this goes next, and this goes next.
Yeah.
So that works the best for me, but I don't always have 4 hours where I can sit at a computer.
Sure, I mean, most people don't, so...
And I wouldn't mind spending my entire weekends doing that. I used to do it a lot more often, but I was also working 4 days a week instead of 5, and so now I have 2 days instead of 3 to get everything important that I need to get done before my work week starts again.
Right.
Not that there's that much important, but there's things.
Sure.
Yeah, so finding the time is not particularly difficult. When I see people on Twitter talking about how they don't have time to write, my initial instinct is you could have spent 10 minutes writing instead of being on Twitter, and that would have easily turned into 40 minutes because nobody stops at 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, part of it is that people put it at a lower priority than they ought to, right? Like,
maybe not that they ought to. It's all a question of, like I see a lot of people, they talk about how much they love writing and how much they want to write, and it's like, all right, but you're not writing. Like, it's a lower priority for me than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people that seem to make it, they talk like it's their first priority, but then I never see them getting anything done. Or they're always talking about how they don't have time for it. And it's like, you do have time. Part of it is
that things like social media are designed to kind of encourage you to pay constant attention to them.
Yeah.
So kind of like cutting yourself off from those for a period.
Podcasts.
Can help, yeah.
Listening to 2 idiots blather back and forth.
Well, I mean, the idea is that we'd hopefully get some good advice out eventually.
Eventually. One day.
And people can listen to this at 1.5 times speed. It's, if you're on YouTube, they fix the pitch. But if you're not on YouTube, if you download the episode from like Spotify, then we sound like chipmunks, and it's really funny.
Yeah, the helium pair, they call us.
Yes.
has nothing to do with what you just said, but I'm going to
Speak
play
for
the
yourself.
physics card on that one.
So
yeah, the helium pair will be our science podcast.
I mean, part of it is that, you know, if you do work a full-time job, you come home and you're pretty tired. But, like, there's all kinds of other tasks that can go into writing. Like, if you're not married to the position of never outlining things, you could work on an outline for an hour, and then you have some words written down. You know, it's not typing necessarily, but, you know, you would have some kind of a framework. And then the next day you build on that framework, and the next day you build on that framework, and the next day you move forward and build a new framework. Like, there's definitely... Go ahead.
Well, don't forget that part of the process is coming up with new ideas. So even if you're not writing anything,
True.
If, you know, you take a drive for half an hour and think about what you're going to write, you're still kind of doing the process.
Well, yeah, the creative process is not just the writing, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to what you're saying. Like, it does feel strange after having, you know, done work where it was just my job to do things for, you know, 9 or 10 hours a day, and then I would come home and, you know, whatever, right? But, like, when you are used to a wage job, generally the way that they measure whether you're working or not is by watching you do things. And writing is a very different process in the sense that sometimes you do just need to sit there and be like, well, what's the next, what am I going to do next, kind of thing. And so, yeah, it took me a while to get away from the obsession that, you know, I needed to be acting rather than thinking. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
And I think I've mentioned that before, because it is, I think, a common mistake that people make trying to, you know, do writing, is that they're like, well, if I'm not actually writing things... Like, there's a lot of people that recommend this, like, journaling method where you just write whatever you can. You just write stream of consciousness nonsense about nothing onto a piece of paper, and I always felt like that was a waste of time. Like...
I do think it's a waste of time, but that might be another episode. My reasoning for that. I think that we can kind of... Let's give a bit of a parallel here.
Sure.
I remember a lot of times there's... So people who say that they can't find time to write remind me a lot of the people that say they can't find time to exercise.
Yeah.
I think what it really is in both cases is writing is difficult and exercise is difficult, and you kind of go into it thinking about what you're going to be doing, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, boy, I really don't want to do those squats today. Okay, maybe I'll take 5 more minutes before I get to it. Mm-hmm. But you're already overthinking the fact that all you have to do is do the squats and be done with it.
Yeah.
And it's another thing that it's a task like writing. Everyone thinks of tasks as long things.
Yeah. You
can get away with writing a half hour a day. You can get away with exercising half an hour a day, and you will still see results. Mm-hmm. It's not, you know, I mean, exercise is a little bit different. Like, if you're eating 10 pounds of food but only doing about 5 pounds of burning calories throughout the week, then yeah, you're not going to see the results you want. There is still something going on there.
There will be a result.
If you're exercising for 5 minutes a day, you're still doing something, but you're not going to see the result you want. But you don't have to do much to see the results you want with either writing or exercise. And then it's also a matter of, okay, so you've been working out every day regularly, half hour, 5 hours, whatever, doesn't matter. But then you hit a day and it's like, all right, well, what do I want to do today? What do I need to do? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm new to this. I'm really sore with it. That's usually a good time. Instead of doing the exercise that day, you know, maybe do some light exercise or just some stretches, but then think about, like, well, what am I going to focus on tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And, you know, you're not really putting it off by doing that, because you still do, like, maybe, you know, 5 minutes of stretches, and then you say, okay, so where do I feel like I need the most work here? And you reason it out, you come up with a plan, and you've got an idea for the next day, and then you get back into it the next day, and the next thing you know, you're rolling for, you know, 4 or 5 days. And, you know, as someone who used to exercise anywhere up to, you know, 6-8 hours a day, I can safely tell you that you don't need that much. A half hour a day can give you a lot of results. in terms of your health.
Okay.
And writing is the same thing in the sense that you can sit there and write for half an hour every day, and then you get to the one day where I always see this on Twitter a lot. People will be like, I wrote all week and thought I was doing good, and then today I sat down and I had the writer's block, which is not a thing.
Well, I mean,
it just means
I guess it
that
could be a thing. Like
it's a thing.
There could be the case where you literally can't think of something good or interesting to write for days and days and days on end. I wouldn't call one day writer's block. I would call one day, recuperating. Maybe.
Well, it's this kind of panic that people have where it's like,
sure.
Oh, I can't think of anything to do today. I must not be good at this. And they start to mentally give up on it right away. And that usually it's just, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's just a matter of waking up the next day and taking a shower and realizing while you're daydreaming, oh, that's a good idea. I'll use that. And you're ready to go again. It's not the most difficult thing in the world to
Well, I mean, I don't want to belittle
to
people
thinking.
that actually have major creative blocks for extended periods of time.
Sure, but the thing is,
the thing is that stressing out over it is rarely going to fix the problem.
It's not just the stressing out over it. It's also not realizing that. Well, okay, so it could depend on how you're approaching it. Like, are you actually spending a couple of minutes the days that you can't think of anything to try and think of something?
Yeah, right.
Or are you like worrying in your head, like, oh my God, I got to get something written, and you're just like, you're not focusing on what you should write.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You just sometimes you just gotta throw around ideas in your head until you think of something. Like, a lot of times I'll just think like, okay, what would be, if this was a movie, if I was watching a movie and I was at this scene, what would be cool to happen next in the movie? And it could be something predictable. It could be something that could be a surprise. You don't have to write the most clever thing on every single page of your work, because honestly, that wouldn't be a good book, for one thing. And for another thing, it wouldn't work. You can't just have like every like good movie has one or two moments that are really clever.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to write the whole movie like that, you're never going to get anything done, because sometimes it takes some work to come up with the clever idea.
Yeah.
You might have a book that has 30 clever ideas in it, but if the whole book is just going to be clever ideas, and you're trying to get and you've got 30 good ones, and then you're trying to fit 1,000 in, you're just sabotaging yourself. Sometimes it's just a matter of, all right, I just need to get from point A to point B in this part. And that's what makes the story, that's what makes the other 30 really good parts worth it.
One thing that has kind of happened in writing recently is this obsession with subversion. And man does not live on subversion alone, right?
No.
So, clever ideas are great. But at the same time, your characters will be a lot more relatable, for instance, if, sometimes they talk about something that is normal and predictable. If they just talk about, food that they like, or what they're working on, or something like that.
Or if two of the characters... Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, or if two of the characters take another one out back and say, kill a pig. Right,
yeah, or wax a pig. That would be the less
or
violent.
Wax a pig, yes.
Yeah. Finally, a use for my degree. There are places where it makes sense to have kind of mundane aspects of the world show up. And, if all you're doing is trying to play peekaboo with the reader all the time, that can get very tiring for the reader, for one. But number two, if the reader never knows what to expect, then they aren't really connecting with your characters either. Your characters are just jack-in-the-boxes that surprise them every once in a while. As opposed to like, oh yeah, this character likes root beer, I don't know, right? And have something in there about that. And you can do things that are surprising in these normal contexts as well. You can have something be unusual, or have someone have a strong reaction to something, or something like that. There's a lot of options, but like, not everything needs to be some kind of elaborate, Death Note style plot that gets sprung on the reader. There can be points where they just are like, hey, let's have lunch, and then they have lunch.
Yeah, and not only simple things like that, but there's also the aspect of I've seen, like, in mystery stories, I've seen a lot of times, well, maybe a few times, but concrete examples aside, there's definitely been a few mysteries I've read where the person who wrote it just, like, wants to change the context of everything on every page, where it's like, oh, but this is also going on. Oh, this isn't what we thought it was. And it gets to a point where, like, I'm in my head every time something changes drastically that's supposed to surprise me. All I hear is da da da.
Yeah, over and over again.
It starts to get ridiculous, and that's the da 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 test. If you read through a book and you're hearing da 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 in your head every 5 seconds, you start to, the shock value starts to go away. Surprises are good, but moderation is also good.
Agatha Christie can get that way sometimes. There's definitely points in, like...
No. Agatha Christie is a good counterexample to what I'm talking about, because when she has something change drastically, it's usually done so in a very smooth and kind of, like, slowly unveiled by the detective. Usually Hercule Poirot will be like, but then I noticed this, and this changes the context of this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times she isn't doing it throughout the whole book when she does it. A lot of times it's at the very end of a Hercule Poirot novel.
Sure. I don't know, I was kind of thinking about, like, there's the sequence in the Murder on the Orient Express where Poirot is going through and basically throwing guesses at everyone to prove that they're not who they say they are. And it's Agatha Christie. It's fairly well executed, but there is a certain element of dun 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 over and over again at that part of the book in particular. Like, reading it over and over again, it's like, okay, I can skip this because I kind of know. Like, the only part of this that is really interesting is the surprise, and I know the surprise already.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, we've seen it made fun of too in a lot of things. I know there was that 1980s television show called Morton and Hayes that was pretending to be an old black and white television show, and in one of them, Morton and Hayes were detectives. And the lights kept going out in the room and people kept dying, and they kept thinking that the murderer was this next person, and then the lights would go out and then that person was dead. Yeah. And it just, kind of made fun of that whole aspect of it. But I'm definitely thinking more along the lines of less memorable mysteries that I've read where they felt the need to try and give me a new surprise nearly every page, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, even the surprise becomes annoying.
Yeah, pretty much. Or my voice going out. That
also, yes.
Yeah, that gets a little bit annoying. I don't know how much that has to do with finding the time to write.
No,
but it's a good point that we made.
Can we roll it back somehow? Like, I guess are you spending too much time thinking about that? Yeah, right. Like, well, like, are you trying too hard to get a final draft down when you should be putting down a rough draft? I guess is maybe the takeaway there.
Right.
Right. Like, it's okay for your first draft to be rough, and so you don't need to write. You don't need to have the most amazing thing on your first run through. It's perfectly fine to say, okay, this part of the book sucks. How do I fix it later on? And it's easier to fix it when you have that when you have something to compare it to, right? Because you can say, this part of the book is boring. Okay, now I need to make it not boring. And that's easier than simply sitting down to a blank page and saying, okay, I need to write something not boring. If you put yourself in that situation where your expectations for yourself are too high, you can paralyze yourself, basically. That's
another big mistake I think people make when they're editing.
Yeah.
They get to the point where they're editing and then it feels like a chore. And editing is a chore, but there's another important thing about editing that can kind of be fun.
Yeah.
And that's where you have a part of the story that you didn't quite, you didn't nail it, you didn't quite get everything you wanted, or you don't feel it's that good.
Right.
And you basically get to write a new short story in those moments.
Yeah.
Just to kind of flesh it out or fill in whatever you couldn't figure out before. Or even just change it
drastically. Like you can say this is garbage. But once you look at it and you say, why is this garbage? You can pinpoint the things in it that are garbage. And then you can say, okay, well, we're going to change these things. You write down a list. Then you say, okay, well, this becomes this becomes this becomes this. And now you have something that isn't garbage, or at least significantly less garbage.
Yeah, and then you do the next draft.
Right.
And then you do a final draft in which you turn everything into garbage.
I mean, that's the plan.
Only if you're me. Only if you're me. Finding the time for it's not a big deal.
Well, no, I mean, you keep saying that, and it's not true, right? Because, again, the finding the time for it is not that hard if you put a high priority on it. And what people will often try to do is say, I need a block of 3 hours, when a block of a half an hour is totally reasonable. People will say, I need to write something amazing in this half hour, when you could just spend the half hour thinking and writing down a few ideas or writing some scaffolding, right? But the point is that a half hour is a lot easier to find time. It's a lot easier to find half an hour than 3 hours. But let's say hypothetically that you're having trouble finding half an hour. What do you do?
I kind of want to say this is why I think it's not a hard thing to do to find time. Because if you have a half hour every day that you can do it, but you keep getting interrupted by other things that you really have to do, what you have to remember is that a day doesn't mean anything. And I don't mean like skipping a day is okay. What I mean is the time period of 24 hours where the sun rises and sets is not an important little bracket of time in which you have to fit everything in. Because, you have to assume people have other responsibilities. Maybe little Billy's got to go to the ball game today. All right. You don't write that day. But you don't look at it as a day lost. You look at it as this block of 24 hours I didn't fit a half hour in. But I have another block. I have a whole bunch of hours left in the week. And this is what I mean about people breaking down time in ways where it's like, I can't find the time to do it. And I don't think I've ever met anyone that can't find a way to weasel a bit of time here and there, unless they were some kind of financial institute, high-level executive banker or something, in which case I can understand that, you don't want to sacrifice that half hour of cocaine time in order to get to your writing. I fully get that.
Sure. I mean, you write after that. It goes a lot faster.
Well, I mean, you would not believe it. But yeah, I mean, if you're not pulling 80-hour weeks, if you're working 40 or 60, even 60 hours a week, okay, cut it down to 15 minutes. I'm not joking. You can get a lot done in 15 minutes. And what you do is you set a timer. You sit down, you put the timer down. You might spend the first 5 minutes thinking, oh crap, okay, what am I going to do with this 15 minutes? And then you come up with something. Then you spend 10 minutes writing. Maybe you only get 100 words done in a day in 15 minutes. You know what? If you could do 2 books a year with 400 words a day, you can still get a book done every 2 years with 100 words a day.
Yeah. Or a shorter book.
Yeah, or a shorter book. We're talking, because that'd be a 60,000 word book roughly at 400 words a day. And the thing is, some days you'll have 15 minutes, some days you'll have an hour. It's a matter of what else are you doing that is a higher or lower priority.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a little bit of fun time here and there, but maybe you're playing 2 hours of video games every day. Well, one of those hours could be for writing instead.
Yep. One other thing I'd like to add is that one thing you can do to help, because one of the issues that I often have, right, is that I'll think of something, and then I will, I'll think of something, and I won't be near a computer or something like that. And so I'll be like, oh, that's a good idea. And then I'll completely forget about it before the next time I get to a computer. And so if you just keep something on you that you can jot down a quick note, a few words here and there, you can actually make sure that you don't lose any of those good ideas, because they will pop up as you're kind of doing tasks that don't require full brain power. You're driving down the road or whatever, driving down an empty road or something like that. You'll be like, oh, that's a good line. I should put that in there somewhere. And if you keep driving, you might forget. But if you stop at the next red light and write down 2 or 3 words to remind yourself of what it is, then you won't lose that time either. And if you put together enough of these little points, you can make a pretty fun little scaffold from them as well, right? Like, it's kind of the inverse of a scaffold. There's no scaffolding yet, but you kind of hang these flags at certain points, and you say, here's something cool for this part, here's something cool for this part, here's something cool for this part, and that'll help you. That'll give you something to build the scaffolding around when you actually do have time to sit down and write things.
Yeah, and let's look at it from the non-plotter point of view. So
Sure.
I might be sitting around and thinking up what I'm going to write and come up with, say, a really cool line or something. It does not bother me in the least if I forget what that line is. I mean, it might be like, oh man, that was really cool and I can't remember it. Oh well, and I move on. And the reason I do that, there's a couple of reasons I do that. One reason is sometimes whatever I come up with later might be even better. I don't know. A lot of times, because you could have a good idea and then forget it, and then you're writing and you get to the point where that idea would have gone and you're like, I really wish I could remember that. But then you get done writing the whole thing and you go back through the book and you're reading through and maybe you get to that part again and you're just like, oh, actually what I put there is pretty good as it is. Or when you get to that same point, you're like, oh, this isn't very good right here. I should come up with something here. And now you've got the entire book done. Mm-hmm. And you can come up with something really good for that part, and that's all you have to think about. So it never bothers me if I came up with... You have to kind of throw away the notion that you always have to remember every single good idea that you ever have, because you're not going to stop having good ideas. Everyone will have good ideas here and there, and especially if you're writing, if you're actively trying to come up with good ideas, you'll occasionally land on some. It's not just something where it's like, oh, I'll never have a good idea again, and I missed that one opportunity.
At the same time, though, it's better not to lose it than to lose it.
Well, maybe, but then, it also becomes a question of if you're trying to figure out where to find time to write and when are you actually taking the notes? Are you taking them in the middle of something else important that you're doing? And are you therefore letting the writing interfere with another important thing in your life?
Obviously you don't, put down the scalpel in the middle of surgery to write down the funny one-liner you thought of, but most of the time, when your mind is wandering, you're not doing something very important anyway. That's kind of my point, right? If you're doing something that doesn't require your focus and you're kind of daydreaming about your writing, and you come up with something good, well, you're already doing something that doesn't require your full attention, because your mind is, by definition, wandering, and therefore, if you just keep something at hand, you run less of a risk of losing those little flashes of inspiration when they happen.
Sure, I'm just saying that it might not be the most important thing in the world if you do lose track
you
of
can
something.
get new ideas, but at the same time, if you have one that's really good and you lose it, you might end up kicking yourself for it for a while. It's hard to avoid that.
Well, it's also a matter of, kind of like having the confidence that you can come up with another good idea. I mean, part of writing is you kind of got to believe. We're talking about
people that are having trouble finding a half an hour to write. They might not have confidence.
That may be the case, but this is a good way to build some, is the realization that you can continually come up with good ideas. It's not, I'm not saying like, I am not suggesting abandon the idea of keeping a notebook. I personally don't write down anything in a notebook. It doesn't need to even
be a notebook. Like, it could be there can be a notes app on your phone.
Yeah. Or you could take a picture of something that might remind you of the thing. I don't know, but it's not really the end of the world if you do lose a good idea. So it's not something to lose any of that confidence over.
Yeah, that's fair.
I always kind of look at it as, all right, I forgot the thing that I was thinking of all morning. Challenge accepted. I'll come up with something better.
Okay, that's a good perspective. Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Without wasting too much time talking about any specifics, at the beginning of this week, I just was randomly thinking about what I would do with robots in a story. Mm-hmm. And I now have an entire idea for probably a good 3 books worth of short stories with robots in the far future. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just like, yeah, I don't have problems coming up with these ideas. And it's probably through, rigorously coming up with new ideas constantly is the best training for that. There's no doubt. Mm-hmm. But
that's another point. Like it might be that you're having an easier time at it than other people are. So taking that into account. The practice aspect is important too. That if you actually sit down and spend some time thinking up some cool ideas. You don't necessarily even need to use them immediately, but you will gradually hone that creative knife, if that metaphor works, which I don't think it does.
Well, so writing is not this intensive skill that you build in the same sense that, you're a physicist. You did a lot of training to become a physicist. And because writing is not a skill that requires as much intensity and training, it's something that you can easily pick up over time by being consistent with both, reading other examples of how things are done and constantly trying to come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that I don't take notes, because it's a distraction to me from coming up with an idea in a daydream when I have that moment where I'm not 100% focused on something else, versus pulling out a pen and paper and actively writing something instead of imagining it and then, having the story in my head for, when I do sit down to write something. It's like, okay, I had this idea. Now I'm in front of my computer or I'm at my notebook. What do I want to jot down about it? Yeah. And it seems to make it easier, to have, well, it's kind of like our last April Fool's example. I mentioned that in the MacGyver one, we took notes, and I do feel like that one came out a little bit better. But the point is, we thought about it beforehand, and then we sat down and did it. Whereas the other one, which was still good, we, or at least I think so, we sat down and just kind of winged it. And that's the thing. It's like there will be times where minimal effort sometimes will give you a good result. And so you don't have to constantly be thinking about exactly what it is you need to be doing to continue to be a writer. Mm-hmm. It's remove all sense of hopelessness when you actually endeavor to do these things. Because every time you think, oh, well, anyone's going to start to think, oh, it's not worth doing, then, they're only sabotaging the actual act of trying to do it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is abandon all
nothing's worth doing. Yeah, abandon
here.
all. Look, if you're a writer, you've already abandoned enough hope in life. So
okay, that's fair.
You should at least be confident of something. It's like, well, do I want money or do I want to be a writer? Do I want to have a good time every day or do I want to be a writer? And that's another running gag that I think too many people don't treat like the gag that it should be. Yeah. There's too many people that talk about writing, and a lot of people talk about it like it's such a chore, and it's like this is one of the most fun things you can do by yourself. At least if you're writing fiction. I mean, if you're writing a textbook, that can be considerably more work, a lot bigger of an endeavor, a lot more research.
Sure.
If you're writing fiction, it doesn't necessarily take that much, and really, you're always better off writing what you know, or at least writing something that you're into at the moment. So like if you suddenly take an interest in boats, okay, there you go. You've got, you read a couple books on boats, keep a couple handy and write something about boats. You're good to go. There's a lot of people in the writing communities that will ask the question, usually in a clickbaity way, or an engagement baity way, I should say, on Twitter, where they'll say, writers, do you write what you like or do you not do that? And I don't understand that question, because why, especially if you're going to sit down and write fiction, why in God's name would you write a subject you're not interested in?
Well, for money.
Well, no, but I mean, you can, look, I could sit down and write a fantasy romance novel or a science fiction romance novel, and I could make it fun for myself because I'm writing fiction, so I can write it the way I want to, and I can write it a way in which it will clearly be in that genre, and I can market it that way. It doesn't change that I still get to write something that I know, because those genres are only different in the sense that they kind of revolve around the romantic development of two characters. They're not any different in the sense that you get to choose what the story is about.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me that if someone chooses to write some kind of romance novel, that suddenly they're writing something they don't like, because they still get to choose what the story is. You can, maybe with the exception of something really gruesome and traumatizing that you really don't want to write, that you're forcing yourself to. I mean,
let's imagine a market hypothetically where it's not just that it has to be romance, it's that it has to be really, really like trite and like, you know, saccharine romance, right? Like at some point, the audience can be stupid enough that you say this is awful, but it's the thing that makes money right now.
Okay, well, I have a question for you there then.
Sure.
Why wouldn't anyone just crank out 100 AI novels at that point, which seems to be what a lot of people are going to do anyway? Because if everyone has to write such a similar thing that one is practically indistinguishable from the other, nobody's even going to know.
I said that from a literary perspective, the quality is garbage.
Yeah, that would be AI writing.
I mean, that would be one method to do it, but that's not only method to do
my
it.
point is, though, like, why would someone put the work in if they don't care? Like even jobs I hate that I have done in my life, I care about my work. And if you're actively doing something where you don't care about your work, then you may as well just leave it to the AI slot people and let them have a field day, because why bother? You know?
Well, I mean, if it's lucrative enough.
Well, yeah, but at that point, you're competing with the AI slot people who can write 50 books to your one.
Like I said, it is possible for the market to not accept AI slop, but also to accept something that is similarly but differently garbage.
Well, I would argue then that it's not very likely that all of writing is going to boil down to the only money-making opportunities are a single genre.
Sure.
There might be a lot of genres that are the top genres that I don't care about myself and I don't care to write. That's definitely true. But I definitely can't say that there's one genre that's so dominating that there's just no way anyone could break in anywhere else.
Sure. But, I mean, at the same time, I can definitely visualize a case where I write something that I wouldn't care to read, but I write it because other people want to read it, right? The purpose of production is to produce things that... If you're trying to produce things for the purpose of being paid to do so, you have to make the things that other people want, not what you want, I guess is the point that I'm at pains to make, right? Like, you might hate McDonald's, but if you work at McDonald's, you still have to make McDonald's cheeseburgers.
That may be, but there's two things that I see wrong with that. Number one, writing is a creative process, unlike being on an assembly line. So no matter what it is that people really want to read, even if you're dumbing it down, you still have control over the story. You can take what everyone else is reading as a really bad story and change it to your liking so you enjoy writing it and still be writing the same kind of story. I guess there's also the aspect of so there's like, when I worked at the printing press, large quantity of the books that we ran off the printing press were these, like, glorifying the urban lifestyle of drug dealing and becoming a drug lord.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily think that I could enjoy reading those books, but if I was going to write one, I would probably just minimalize the things that I normally don't care to read myself. Like I'm willing to bet many of them have very adult themes to them. That's
Sure.
The stuff I would minimalize, and I would focus on the stuff that I find more interesting, like maybe some of the action that's in those books.
Yeah, but again, you know, there's the possibility, which can't be denied, that it might be that the things that you're trying to minimize are the things that other people want to read.
Well, yeah, I mean, if people just want porn, then yeah, obviously that. But like, so here's the thing: if the only thing that you could make money writing was porn, would you write porn? Some people would. I wouldn't.
Sure.
So it just
but we're not talking about you. We're talking about writers in general.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I like the way you worded that. We're not talking about you. We're talking about writers.
Yes, that is what I said.
No, but that's the thing, though. It's like, so I guess the point is, like, at what point are you not a writer anymore? If, you know, you view yourself as a writer because you wanted to write stories, you wanted to come up with the stories, and part of the process of being a writer is being creative about it and creating your own thing. But then
Sure.
You realize the only way that you can make money off of it is if you write porn, and you don't like writing porn.
Well,
So you are writing.
You're over pigeonholing again. Like you know.
No. I'm doing exactly the opposite. I'm trying to make the case I already made the case once that that's not the only genre that will make money. If you want to be a writer whose sole purpose is to make the most money possible, there is absolutely no reason that you shouldn't be writing porn at that point. And there's different levels of what being a writer is. I'm at the level where you make no money, but I still write.
Right. So like my point is that, you know, for the purpose of giving advice to a person who wants to write for a living, that you may need to write things that you don't really. Well, I mean, I'm not going to simplify the market that much, but like,
yeah, but I'm not wrong.
You definitely should do some market research and consider writing things that you might not particularly enjoy reading, and then you can hand the editing off to someone else as well, because there's nothing that would be more annoying than reading over and over again something that you don't enjoy reading. But
sure,
that's why division of labor is a thing.
Well, that's another way you could look at it. If you're just talking about this is the career I want to have. If you don't care, you just want to write as someone who makes money. Another thing you can do is just ghostwrite for people. You're not going to be writing things that you're going to find particular. In fact, I'm pretty sure every ghostwriter I've ever talked to about it has said, "Oh God, I hated doing this person's book. I hated their life. I didn't want to know any more about it, but it made me money." So
yeah.
so yeah, you can do things like that. And that, you know, honestly, sometimes that sounds fun. I've met people online who just like, I can't write. I wish someone could write something for me. It's like, I mean, I guess I could, but, you know, 9 times out of 10, that person doesn't want to pay for it either. So I've never actually done that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you could find people that want you to write things for them, yeah, there's a career right there where you wouldn't be writing what you want necessarily, but you would be writing, and it's probably better money than you can make in a lot of cases. Just writing for yourself. But I honestly think you were restricting it too much by just kind of, you know, saying that, well, you want to be a career writer, you're going to have to write something you don't want. Well, that hasn't proven out to be the case,
That's
though.
not what I said, though, so.
Okay, well, the idea that, you know, we're kind of saying, okay, the thing this person likes to write, they can't make money at. There's not too many areas that I can think of. There's harder areas to make money with writing, but I can't think of too many areas where it's impossible to make money writing. I mean, there's still people that make money writing science fiction, and that's probably one of the weakest areas I can think of at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's really hard to make money writing science fiction, but people still do it. That's another thing you have to take into account. It's like, by posing the question, well, what does someone do if what they write isn't something that makes them money, but what they want to do as a career is write? We're kind of enclosing it in this idea that everyone's going to make it if they write the right thing, and even that is a stretch, because even if
mean, certainly, right? Yeah, I mean, like, it's not just about plugging in genre that is popular and writing a book in that genre, for sure. It's more complicated. It's way more complicated than that. And in fact, there may be people who just don't have the skill, right? Like they don't have the attention span for it, or something like that. But you know,
or they just are out of luck. You know, sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes the dice just don't roll up your way.
Right. But I mean, as far just the thing that I would advise such people who feel like they're in that area to do is, I would say, well, you may not be able to make money writing right now, but the market does move around sometimes, and sometimes something that nobody would have expected to become a smash hit becomes a smash hit. And so it might be that you can't make it a job, and so now you need to limit the amount of time that you're writing to the time that you can find outside of some other job. But at the same time, that doesn't mean stop writing necessarily.
Yeah,
because you know, maybe you will come up with the next Harry Potter. Who knows?
Yeah, and there's really the best advice that you can give in those terms is, it's not worth it to be a starving artist, but you also shouldn't give up on your hobbies that you enjoy doing.
Yeah,
unless
writing as a hobby
unless you're in really dire straits and you absolutely need to be doing something else to survive.
Right.
I'm trying to think Like, where are we left in the world with places that you absolutely have no time to write just because of your geographic situation? Not too many places in the world that you can't be a writer.
No.
And so you don't have to really give up on that unless you are working a horrendous 80-hour work week job and have a family to support, and you have something that you're doing to support them every day, or you just have some ridiculous obligations. Maybe you're paying off a student loan, and so it's more important for you to be working as much as possible to make money and get that paid off than it is to even taking that half hour of writing every day is just too much. You gotta keep plugging away and making sure you're getting the sleep you need and eating right and everything. Then it's understandable, but there aren't too many people who are in such dire straits that they have neither the time to write nor the time to, just basically don't be a starving artist. Don't make yourself destitute trying to write, but don't give up on it if you really want to do it. And even if you're plugging away at it for half an hour a day, you will make progress. And another thing to remember is, like, maybe you write a lot to start. Let's look at another variation on your time situation. You're writing a ton of stuff. You got 10 books out there, but you're making no headway. You're making no money. And now you find, okay, I need to go do something else. I need to be earning a living in some other way. And so you start to think, okay, well, should I just stop writing altogether? Or do I cut it back and maybe write one book a year, one book every 2 years? And you have to remember, you still have the other 10. So even if you slow it down, if you're still putting something out there, anyone can discover one of those 10 at any time and then see, oh, this person is actually still writing. And they just kind of look for your next book, maybe next time they go to look for something to read. I mean, when I first started reading Terry Pratchett, that's how it happened. I read one book by him and I was like, this guy's really good. And so I went to the library every time I finished one and I got every single one they had. And then, because I was still in, I wasn't even old enough to be working, so I didn't have any money to go out and buy them. So,
right.
Yeah, people gave me some Pratchett books for Christmas and things back then. It was good times.
Yeah.
And I got through all the books that way, and I still go back and read them to this day. I granted that Terry Pratchett is definitely not getting more money from me just because he can't, but if he were alive today and writing another book, he'd be making more money off of me. And considering how many people I specifically must have gotten 15 other people in my lifetime to read Terry Pratchett's books. And that's just one person that thought he was a really good writer. That's why the guy became as famous as he did. You only need a handful of people to say, this person's really good. I need to tell everyone else who reads books about him.
Mm-hmm.
And that could happen the first year you write. That could happen 20 years after your first book. So
the other thing worth mentioning, perhaps, is that, if you really want to spend time writing, but you find that you just can't move it apart, time management is a skill. There are techniques and things like that you can use to help, organize your time a little bit more appropriately, to help maybe set aside that little block here and there. If not every day, then every other day. If not every other day, then, twice a week. If not twice a week, then once a week. But, take it as an opportunity to learn a new skill. If you really if you really feel a pressing desire to write frequently, but you find yourself, running out of time, you might find that just like a little, like reading a book on, stopping procrastinating or time management might help you, fit the key in the lock, so to speak, and find the way to get that extra 15, 20, 30 minutes a day for yourself. People underestimate this a lot, but there are people who've come up with ideas and neat techniques and time-saving things where it's like, oh, I could do this, and if I learn this technique, then, well, that frees me up 15 minutes a day, and there you go.
One of the best ones that I'm aware of, that I don't really use myself, but I have tried before, is having a timer for the things you want to do.
Yeah.
And you just stick to that timer. If you put the timer down and say, I will go until this timer goes off, then I'm done, and then I move on to the next thing that I need to do.
Yeah.
That is a really good time management skill, because it tells you up to the minute when you're going to be done with what you're doing. Right. And
And so you can know beforehand that you're not going to like have, it's like, oh, I don't need to leave to go do this errand until 3 p.m. So if I set this timer for 15 minutes, well, it's 2:35. I will still have time to get in the car and go do this thing that I need to do at 3 p.m. kind of thing.
Well, it can also help your sense of accomplishment sometimes, because
yes, that too.
If you're writing and 9 o'clock hits, and let's say 9 o'clock is your bedtime, and you're like, I gotta get another half hour out of it, and you do that extra half hour, and you sacrifice a little bit of sleep, and it the next day you wake up and you're tired, and you're like, well, it was worth it because I got that extra half hour. Mm-hmm. That's the exact same feeling you will get if you have that timer set there. It goes off at 9 o'clock. You say, I have fulfilled my obligations. I'm done for the night. I'm going to bed. And you get that extra half hour of sleep. Yeah. And you wake up the next day and it's like, and I can do it again today. I did it yesterday. Not a problem. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of like, you kind of got to get over the idea that you're not doing enough, because sometimes doing less is what's helping you get more done. Mm-hmm. I tried to do way too much back in the day, and it did not pan out because of how much I was trying to get done at once. Mm-hmm. And I definitely wouldn't have gotten any books written back when I was in college, which is when I should have been writing them. Uh-huh. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for not overdoing it sometimes. You kind of have to think of it in terms of...
Yeah, if you stretch yourself too thin, you end up paying for it later.
Well, it's not just that. There is, mental fatigue isn't necessarily the exact parallel to physical fatigue that some people like to claim it is, but if you are working that hard on something, even in your head, it will start to stress you out too much to where it's just like you lose focus on what it is you need to be getting done. It's not too different from having a job where it's like, I got a job where it's like, here's a bit of heavy lifting, here's a bit of light lifting. If the whole job was heavy lifting after heavy lifting after heavy lifting, and it's just like at some point, as you get older, it's just like you're not going to be able to do it anymore. It's going to get to you too much, and maybe you get to snap. And this is coming from the guy that they call Hercules at work, so you just can't do it all the time. People like to live on coffee and do these things, and I am all for drinking your coffee while you're writing, but trying to keep going with coffee, I think, is where people make a lot of mistakes. And I also think that a lot of bad writing comes out of that, especially when you get to the editing stage. You do not want to keep going with your editing sustained on nothing but caffeine.
That's true, yeah.
Because you're going to make mistakes editing at that point. You're going to be stressing yourself out with the editing too much. And I have, just from the way people talk about how much they hate editing, like, I don't like editing, but it's part of the job if you want to do it. Mm-hmm. Or, you can obviously have someone else do it too. So that's probably a better way to go. I personally like doing it. Mm-hmm. But it's not, I won't say it's as fun. It's not as fun as the writing part, for sure. It is fun to analyze what you've done. That's the fun part of editing. Actually going in and changing stuff is where it's like, okay, now I need a new idea here. Also kind of fun, but, it's a rigorous process compared to the act of just sitting down and typing. Yeah. Usually with fresher thoughts in your head. So I think that making enough time where you can is at least a good place to start. I think that really this particular piece of advice, anyone who writes long enough will kind of just fall into it, fall into doing what it is that they really need to be doing, as long as they're thinking about it.
If you make it part of your routine, that helps too sometimes, right? Like, because, like, for instance, let's say you have a job, and you work, whatever, however many hours, you come home. If you make it your habit to just sit down and write for 15 minutes or half an hour right after you get home, as opposed to making dinner or taking a nap or something like that, whatever it is that you might feel more tired, but you'll at least get it done. And eventually you might get used to that routine where, at first you'll probably put out some really crappy writing where it's like, oh yeah, I just got home from work, but I got to do this half hour of writing. But, once you've been doing it for a week or, 2 weeks, you're like, yep, this is my half hour. I got to do this. I'm going to just crank it out. And hey, it's not so bad. I'm less tired now than I will be right before bed, kind of thing as well.
Yeah. it really helps if you, okay, so like, it might be one thing to have a good schedule to stick to. It might also be another thing that occasionally you're just too tired to do it. Like if you get to the point where you're at your keyboard and your head is like falling forward, you're not going to be doing your best writing. Take at least 10, 20 minutes at that point. Take a nap. Don't take an hour nap because then you'll be too tired when you get up to go on. But 10, 20 minutes is enough to get you to where you're not going to be falling asleep at your keyboard.
I mean, it depends on the person. Some people,
unless you're missing serious sleep all the time.
No, I mean, like some people can do the power nap and some people cannot. So,
oh, that's another thing that a buzzer works nice for.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I personally, I like my sleep, so I try to get it more often than not. I actually told myself I was going to be in bed an hour earlier than I am now going to be today, but that's okay because this is fun.
Fair enough.
I have had quite the couple of weeks where it's just like, so I was trying to see if my sleep would be better if I slept for an hour after work. Mm-hmm. And then, got up, got a bunch of things done while not being too tired. Right. And then went to bed half an hour later than I usually do. Mm-hmm. And no, that didn't help at all. I either needed to split it up a little finer or I basically just need... I work best, unfortunately, on 8 or 9 hours of sleep. Yeah. But for some reason, 7 hours is not good for me, but then 6 hours is, but then anything lower than that is not. I can't... I'm just way too tired to do much at that point.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's an effect from... There's an effect from, like, the cyclical nature of sleeping, where you can often shave, like, 45 minutes to an hour off of your, like ideal sleep and find that you actually aren't doing that badly because you kind of naturally go through cycles of like light, heavy, and then REM sleep.
Yeah.
And so if you wake up during the light sleep, it's usually not so bad. But if you wake up in the middle of REM sleep, you're like, oh, I feel terrible kind of thing. So those cycles usually take between 40 minutes to an hour. So you might find that, if you're sleeping regularly, say 8 hours, you might try 7:15 and see, if that alarm makes you really groggy or whether it kind of sort of works. So, I mean, that's another time management technique. So,
yeah. Well, I'm the exact opposite. I want to sleep 6 hours a night. I need to sleep 8 hours a night, and I don't feel fully awake unless I sleep 9 hours a night. And I hate missing that much of the day.
Yeah.
And I've always been like that too. Because when I was working night shifts, I got a lot of good sleep. And so I would talk to people. I was like, yeah, I get good sleep before I come in. And they'd be like, wow, you must sleep a lot. It's like, you old people sleep a lot. And I was like, well, no, I've always been like this. I've always needed a lot of sleep. And
yeah. You young whippersnapper. Young
whippersnappers.
Well, I mean, I think we've got a pretty good setup for this week. I don't know, anything you want to add? Last, final thoughts? I mean, if I had to say some final thoughts, I'd say routine and priority. Like, if you make it something that is just the thing that you do every day or every other day, and if you just say, this is higher priority than my video games or this particular hobby or whatever it is, that can push you over the line, and you can get some good writing time that way. Yeah, and you don't miss it so much. Like if you like writing, if you enjoy it, and what you do is you say, okay, I'm gonna deprioritize hobby A, and I'm gonna add a little more priority to writing. You find you think that you're gonna miss hobby A lot, but if you like writing, then you kind of end up saying, okay, this is kind of worth it,
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that sometimes writing is the more fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Even in my 20s, when I definitely played a lot more video games, I would have the occasional moment where I sat down to write, and I'd just be like, I actually had more fun doing this than I had playing Xbox. Why wasn't I doing this instead? Yeah. But then on the reverse of that, sometimes I would spend a lot of time writing, and then I'd finally go back and sit down and play a video game, and it was like, oh man, I should have played more of this week. This is really fun. Mm-hmm. So finding a balance, you'll never find a perfect balance, but you can find a good balance for things. I do have weeks where I prefer to watch movies as opposed to writing. And it doesn't bother me that I miss some writing time to watch a movie because sometimes the movies give me good ideas for new stories.
Right.
Also, don't be a starving artist. Not worth it.
No. Don't do that to yourself.
Full meals are the greatest benefit of modern life for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It has not been a very long time for humanity that we have been in a situation where we don't really go hungry anymore. It's not even been a century. It's been less than a century. And even like the 50 years before that were pretty good, but like then before that, you were fighting for survival. For a long part of human history, it was just like, where does my food come from?
Right.
And now we know that it comes from the truck right there. That's where the food comes from.
The grocery store where it came from.
Yeah, let's not screw that up.
All right. Well, hopefully this rambling nonsense for an hour was somewhat useful to someone. Maybe funny, maybe helpful, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, that's what we've got for this week for you guys. So, as always, this has been the Wordy Pair Podcast. I'm Rudy.
And I am Justin.
And we will see you next week. And,
next week we will be talking about your book.
Oh, I guess we will. Yeah, that'll work. All right, cool. See y'all later.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.